They came for him just after he left the bank. No warning. No knock. Just boots, guns, and shadows. Very dark man didn't scream. He just looked at his mother and said, "Don't cry. This is what happens when you speak the truth." They dragged him out barefoot. He didn't resist. He just kept looking back at his mother, Mama Black, a small woman with shaking hands and tired eyes. Her wrapper was loose, and her voice broke as she whispered, "Please, he is only a child." But the men in black uniforms did not listen. They never do. Very dark man was not a child, not anymore. He was 29 years old. But to Mama Black, he was still the skinny boy who once ran around with a slingshot and dusty feet. Now he was the only voice left in the town who spoke boldly on social media, on the streets, and in community halls. He didn't wear a suit. He didn't use big grammar. But he told the truth. "Government don't chop our money again," he would say in his videos, standing by pothole-filled roads or beside hungry market women. This is wickedness. This is evil. You steal from the poor and leave them with suffering. Why? Every time he spoke, people listened. The streets would gather. Phones would record. His voice became like thunder, shaking people awake. Young people shared his words. Mothers and children prayed for him. Fathers said, "That boy gets courage." But the powerful people in Abuja did not like him. They said he was a troublemaker. They said he insulted leaders. They said he was disrespecting the government. One night, he disappeared. The small room in their one-bedroom flat felt cold. Mama Black sat on the floor, holding her wrapper tight. Her son was gone. She didn't know where they took him. No one came to explain. His phone was off. His Instagram was silent. The neighbors were afraid to ask questions. One woman whispered, "I heard they took him to DSS headquarters in Abuja." Another said, "Maybe it's because of that last video. He called the president a thief." A third voice added, "He's too loud." That's the problem. Nigeria doesn't like loud poor people. But Mama Black didn't care about the gossip. She just wanted her son back. She went to the police station. They said, "We don't know who took him." She went to the local government office. They said, "This matter is above us." She even went to church. At night she cried. She held his old shoes and prayed, "God, please, don't let them kill my boy." Days passed. Then weeks. Online, the silence of Very Dark Man became too loud to ignore. "Where is he?" people asked. "Why is no one talking? Is this how Nigeria treats truth tellers?" One night, a blurry video appeared online. It showed a dark room. A young man tied to a chair. His face swollen. A voice whispered behind the camera, "Is that not Very Dark Man?" The video vanished within minutes. But it was enough. People knew. Very Dark Man was inside a small, dark room. No window. No clock. He didn't know how many days had passed. He had no mirror, but he knew his face was swollen. His lips were cracked. His stomach groaned from hunger. Sometimes, they came in to ask him questions. They didn't ask politely. "Who is paying you to insult the government? Who gave you those videos? Why are you trying to make the president look bad?" He told them the same thing every time. "Nobody pays me. I just talk because the people are suffering. I just want things to be better." Slaps followed. One officer growled, "Your mouth go kill you." But Very Dark Man did not stop talking. Even when blood dried on his shirt. Even when they poured cold water on him. Even when they left him for hours without food. In the quiet, he would close his eyes and whisper prayers for Mama Black. Let her be okay. Let her not fall sick because of this. Outside, things were changing. The video clip had traveled. It reached young people in Lagos, Port Harcourt, Jos, Kano. People began to ask louder questions. Where is Very Dark Man? If they can take him, they can take anyone. We must speak, or we'll all disappear in silence. A small protest began in Abuja. Not many people came at first. Just a few students holding paper signs, "Free Very Dark Man" and "Truth is not a crime." Police chased them away. Some were arrested. But more people came the next day. Then came the hashtags. Hashtag Free Very Dark Man. Hashtag Voice of the Voiceless. Hashtag Speaking is not a crime. Hashtag Free VDM. Soon, radio stations were talking. Even some TV channels who used to fear government threats whispered his name on air. A street artist painted his face on a wall in Yoba. Underneath, he wrote, his words shook the ground. That's why they buried him. Back in detention, a quiet man brought food to Very Dark Man one morning. For the first time in days, the food had fish. The man didn't say much, but he looked sad. As he placed the food on the floor, he whispered, "The world is watching. Don't give up." Very Dark Man didn't reply. He couldn't. His throat was too dry. But he blinked twice. That was enough. Meanwhile, Mama Black had stopped sleeping. Her health was getting worse. The stress was too much. One morning, she fainted outside the local government office while trying to submit another petition. A kind woman helped her to the clinic. The nurse there said, "Your blood pressure is too high, Mama. You need rest." But how can a mother rest when her only son is locked away for telling the truth? She took the medicine, but she didn't stop praying. Every night, she lit a candle beside his photo. "I know you're alive, my son. You're strong. God is with you." Inside Oso Rock, the president sat with cold eyes and stiff lips. His advisors stood around him, silent, waiting for instructions. On the table were news clippings, printed tweets, screenshots of videos. One headline read, "Where is Very Dark Man?" The president spoke slowly. "I told you to make him quiet. Not make him a martyr." An advisor tried to explain. "Sir, we deleted the video, but it had already spread." The president's jaw tightened. The boy was just a Facebook talker. Now the world is shouting his name. Another minister added, "Even foreign media are asking questions now." The president looked away. He hated when poor people became powerful. He hated when simple boys made more noise than government megaphones. "What is his real name again?" he asked. One of the men replied, "Martins Vicente Otts. From Edo State. But everyone just calls him Very Dark Man." The president stood up. "Find a way to silence the noise, without blood." In the secret detention center, they changed tactics. No more beatings. No more shouting. One officer even brought him a Bible. "Just read. It will help your mind," he said. But Very Dark Man didn't want to read. He just wanted the truth to live. He wanted the people to remain awake. One morning, they gave him a form. "Sign this," the officer said. "Say you regret your words. Say you were misled. We'll release you." Very Dark Man looked at the paper. It was full of lies. He dropped it on the floor. "I'd rather rot here than lie." The officer hissed. "You rot, then." Outside, the streets were louder. A huge protest happened in Lagos. Not thousands, but hundreds, wearing black, holding placards, marching peacefully. A woman held her daughter's hand and said to a news reporter, "My husband died because a government hospital had no oxygen." Very Dark Man was the only one who talked about it. We must not forget him. In Jos, a student drew a cartoon of Very Dark Man behind bars, but his mouth wide open, still speaking. The caption, You can cage the body, not the truth. Even in small towns, people prayed for him during church service, mosque gatherings, and family meetings. He had become more than one person. He was now a symbol. Mama Black saw the news on a borrowed phone. She cried, but this time the tears were different. My son is suffering, but he has shaken the country. The next Sunday, she stood in church with weak legs and said, "Please pray for my son." They took him, but they cannot take what he stood for. The whole church knelt down. In a dusty room in Abuja, a junior officer whispered to his friend, "This boy, I think he's going to survive. They can't hold him forever." The friend replied, "Even if they release him, he may not walk again." They broke his ribs. The first man frowned. But his spirit, they didn't break. One morning, just before sunrise, a black van stopped outside a small clinic on the outskirts of Abuja. A man was dumped at the gate like a sack of rice. No words. No signature. No explanation. The nurse on duty stepped out slowly. She saw him. His face was bruised. His eyes were nearly shut. His ribs stuck out like broken sticks. But she knew who he was. "Jesus," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "It's him. It's very dark man." The nurse screamed for help. He spent 3 weeks in that clinic. Nobody visited, except journalists pretending to be family, and strangers bringing food and prayers. When Mama Black arrived, she collapsed in the hallway. My son, you are alive." She held his hand. He couldn't speak yet, but his eyes blinked twice. It was enough. The government said nothing. No apology. No official statement. Just silence. But outside, the streets were louder than ever. People now wore shirts that said, "The truth is not a crime" and "Very dark man lives." A popular radio presenter said, "They tried to bury him. They didn't know he was a seed." Very dark man could not walk properly for months. He used a walking stick. Sometimes he sat during his videos. But he came back. Not with anger. With quiet fire. His first live video after release gathered 30 million views. He sat on a stool, eyes soft, voice slow. "They tried to break me. I was afraid. I won't lie. But I remembered the market women. The students. The Okada men. I remembered you. That's why I didn't sign the paper." Then he paused. "If I stop speaking, who will speak for the poor? If I stay silent, who will shout for the voiceless?" He looked at the camera. "I am not a hero. I am just tired of watching people oppressed." That night, the internet shook. Inspired by his story, more young people began speaking. In Kaduna, a girl exposed the corrupt local chairman. In Enugu, a mechanic recorded the broken borehole project he helped build, unpaid. In Akwa Ibom, a young nurse posted photos of a hospital with no beds and tagged the health minister. People were afraid before. Now they were less so. Very dark man was not perfect. Sometimes he got facts wrong. Sometimes he shouted too much. But he had one thing nobody could take away: he cared deeply. One day, while returning from an event, his car was followed. 2 men on bikes tried to block his way. But the crowd on the street noticed. "No very dark man, oh," someone shouted. People surrounded the car. The bikers ran. He survived. But he knew something. Speaking truth in Nigeria came with a price. He had already paid part of it with blood, and pain, and silence. But he had no regrets. Years passed. Some things got better. Some things didn't. But the story of Very Dark Man became a folktale. Grandparents told children, there was once a man, dark like charcoal, who spoke even when others hid. They didn't remember his real name. They remembered his courage. In schools, students wrote essays titled, "Why I Want to Be Like Very Dark Man." In markets, when people saw injustice, they'd say, "Don't make us call Very Dark Man." His name became more than a name. It became a warning to the corrupt, and a hope to the poor. They tried to silence him. But the truth has a strange power, it echoes. It finds new moths. It becomes wind. And sometimes, it becomes a man. A very dark man. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, kindly like the video, comment what you learned from the tale, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting tales just like this. Thank you.